Hi there. You're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Long pause.
Long pause,
More
the
pauses.
longest of pauses. This has to be possibly one of, as my camera goes out of focus, the smoothest setups that we've had just for an episode.
I think
That
so.
was relatively painless. The only reason we're 10 minutes later than we were kind of planning to be starting is just because we talk too much to
We're
each
just
other.
shit talking. We're shit talking
I mean,
we just
before
catch up.
the
To be
podcast where
fair,
we shit talk.
you guys were talking. I was just sitting here politely waiting to start. So
We were talking about the cinematic masterpiece, The Invisible Man, and
Yes, which was quite awesome.
both Tom and I had lots of feelings about it. Adam clearly is dead inside.
I don't know
Yeah,
what
and
it
Adam's
is.
really hankering for that Employee of the Month award that we just don't have. It was like, you two were distracting from getting the work done whilst I was sitting here quietly
Hang on.
ready and rearing to go. Clearly I am
Just to
the
be clear,
best work
sorry.
guy.
There isn't an employee of the month.
Absolutely
There is
not.
not.
No.
There is not.
Fuck!
Just as you don't
Come
have a
out.
Winnebago.
Oh, he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. Now, see, Adam, we can actually see when you fake the walking out now. I'm just trying to encourage him to throw his stuff down and stand up so far, forgetting that he's attached to his own computer in the headset and just fall over.
Tom's
Down he
just
goes.
baiting at
It's
this
great
point.
because this is an audio medium for the most part. So a lot of people just
That is true. That's
don't get
why we
that joke.
describe. We describe, Adam. We paint a picture with our mouths.
Mouth pictures, if you will.
Mouth
For example, we could describe Adam's rosy red cheeks. That's something that we could describe.
His very rosy red cheeks.
They're not that rosy red. It's just this high definition web camera that
Well, that's the thing, Adam.
Quite too.
High definition reveals the flaws that we didn't know we had.
Mm-hmm. Turns out Sandra Sully is actually a bridge troll. She's actually a gremlin. So that's why they had to get her off air. Is she still on air?
I don't
think.
know.
Oh, but she was. I remember Sandra Sully hosting reality shows and stuff. I don't think she's hosted news for a while.
Good.
I don't know.
I
I
can't
actually,
remember
I'm
who
not
Sandra
up.
Sully is, to be honest.
I'm not up with Sandra Sully news.
It just shows how very much we are not consumers of traditional media. Is that we
the
don't
free to
even
air
know
TV.
what's happening on there at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
well-
Actually, Studio 10 axed a whole bunch of their news division and stuff.
Correct.
I thought they're doing lots of cuts, including was it Kerry Ann Kennelly
Mm-hmm.
has
Oh,
been
God.
axed. So
Oh no!
fuckety bye, Kerry Ann, but also fuckety welcome to Sky News, probably.
Is Sonia Kruger still on the air? Let's just tick
Yeah.
off the
Sonia
idiots one by one.
Kruger hosted Big Brother.
Great. That's definitely who we
Sonia-
should be getting our informed
And
opinions
as in
from.
recently or previously?
No, the literal the season that was 2 months ago.
Okay.
She hosted
Did she host it originally as well?
No, that was Gretel
I don't know. I
Colleen.
never watched.
Gretel
okay.
Colleen.
Gretel Colleen back in the day.
Gretel.
Yeah, no,
And
I
she'd-
never
they
watched.
come off the show and
Big
she'd be
Brother.
like, "How was it giving a blowjob on national television?" And then the person's like, "Oh yeah, it was pretty good."
You guys
And
saw
then
that?
Nah, the only big. Actually, now I'm freaking out that maybe I'm about to embarrass myself, and this wasn't Big Brother, but some reality TV show had the person get kicked off, and then they just sat on a couch with tape over their mouths with a sign that said
Yes.
"Free to refugees."
That was Big
because they
Brother.
just didn't spell all of the.
I believe, if I recall correctly, that gentleman's name was Merlin. Was that correct?
I don't know.
It was obviously
Good times.
Natural selection, we
A
bring you
watershed
informed
moment
opinions.
in,
And-
a watershed moment in Australian culture. That one there, the old
Yes.
tape refugee freeing scenario.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know how I remember this. Merlin
Yeah.
Luck, Big Brother Australia contestant, reveals what he. Whatever. Yeah, it was him
Merlin
with the
Luck.
free the refugees
Merlin.
thing
Yeah.
and the sticker.
He
on
pulls
it.
sword.
George, free to refugees.
To refugees.
To. Yeah.
But look,
Free
I've
to
got a
read.
few. This is why we can't remember. The reason why we can't remember any of this stuff, there is a conspiracy, and that is
Oh, boy.
Google are hiding it in their algorithm,
Uh huh.
guys.
That's fair.
So
There is actually a thing of that people believe our brains are shifting thanks to Google and like that we have access to Google and all of human knowledge in our pockets. Yes, that's my cat on my phone background. I didn't realize that would come up. That's embarrassing. But yeah,
don't be embarrassed about your cat. Don't you ever be cat shamed.
That because I can just go, oh, you know, that was what we were saying before the show. What is Jeff Bezos' net worth or whatever? I can just look it up. That what in previous generations, our long-term, just like general knowledge centers of the brain aren't functioning the same anymore. I don't know what it's called, that part of the brain, but yes, the idea of just retaining general information. Like if you learnt like just what photosynthesis is or something in high school when like normally there's greater retention of that kind of information. Well, you know, we know what photosynthesis is, but if we didn't, we'd just go, oh, as one of my parents' friends would say, he would just say, we don't have to wonder whenever someone says something like, oh, I wonder what blah, blah, blah. I was like, we don't have to wonder. And he'll bust it out and start searching.
Yeah. I do think when you compare it to like, you know, like ancient Greek senators back in the day that could recite, you know, hours of oratory without, you know, like they complained about, and to some extent they were right, the use of the written word as a way of sort of dulling the brain because it was no longer, if you could write stuff down, there was no longer a forcing function for you to remember everything. So, you know, there were campaigns in ancient Greece about like anti-writing because it's going to fuck up everyone's memory.
So writing in ancient Greece was basically the internet of today.
Correct. So just like I remember Merlin from Big Brother with the refugee sign, that's pushed out a bunch of passwords or something. Like there's only so much information my brain can now retain. I could no longer recite a several hours long piece of oratory from memory like my ancient Greek predecessors could.
But I think the real impact to culture and society in this one is that pub trivia just goes down the toilet in terms of you know, people's ability to win, I guess, and be competitive at pub trivia. That's the real problem.
But then that's actually a good reason I feel to once this pandemic's over, hopefully sometime in our lifetimes, if it's over and we can go back to things like pub trivia, that's why I encourage people to regularly do a pub trivia, because then it forces you to either recall this sort of stuff, but then if you fuck the question up, you're probably not going to forget it now because you're like, damn it, I didn't know that. And then you've learnt new facts.
It really depends how many pints you're in, though, in the pub trivia. Yes. So 1 pint, okay, maybe you won't forget. 3 pints, you've probably stopped caring by that point.
Also, the utility...
but maybe it'll retain it. Like, George doesn't quite know how he remembers that Merlin was that guy, but maybe he heard it, like, maybe a couple of years ago after, a couple of pints in, and someone mentioned it, and he subconsciously just retained that. He doesn't remember where he heard it, but he knew it.
Yeah, and you'll never forget how many countries start with G. On
how many is it, George?
Many. I forgot. That's the irony.
The other one I remember is there's only 3 countries in the world or something that start with D.
Denmark, etc.
Djibouti. Oh, it's a city.
Or is it only 2? Oh, is it 2 or 3? I can only think of 2 off the top of my head. The second one is tricky. The second one's a bit of a, fuck off. But yes, it is actually its name.
The Democratic Republic of the
derp. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is the correct answer.
Hey,
but yes.
You got it.
No, there are hundreds of democratic republics that aren't actually democratic.
No, there's a lot of people's republics. I don't know how many democratic republics there are.
We can argue till the cows come home as to whether the Democratic Republic of the Congo is actually democratic. But in terms of the name of the country, it is the Democratic Republic.
I've always argued that the more you have to emphasize your credibility as being a People's Republic of democratic whatsoever, the more you have to emphasize it, the less true it probably is.
Yes, that's true. And also
North Korea, North Korea is a Democratic Republic of Korea.
I don't know.
No, that's literally the name of North Korea, is the Democratic Republic of North Korea.
I think we might be getting slightly sidetracked.
All right, so 3 countries that begin with D. So there you go. But
the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, the Democratic Republic of China, which is actually Taiwan, Democratic Republic of the Congo,
there you go,
and so on and so forth.
There you go. Well, so clearly the pub trivia I learned that from was incorrect.
Yeah, no one ever said pub trivia is fact checked. Do you know what I mean?
This is true.
Oh, I get roasted all the time as being the person who's always being like, but actually in season 3 of that TV show, we found out blah, and questioning the pub trivia person.
I'm sorry, the card.
I came to have fun, but I came to win.
I didn't come to make friends.
I want the $100 pub voucher.
The card says moops. There's Moors, you idiot. Sorry, it says moops.
That's a Simpsons reference.
Seinfeld. Nice try, though, Adam. I like that you're trying. So
we bring up Google. Adam tried to segue to this ages ago.
This is a news and politics.
Get into the fucking news, boys.
Yes, this is a news and politics podcast, as you might have guessed.
From the last, if you did, well done.
14 minutes or so of just pure drivel. So it was big news this week. Google announced via an open letter to the public that jackbooted government dogs are coming to steal your Gmail, and government overregulation was, of course, ruining the world.
And that they announced it via a little, it looked like a security warning link on the Google homepage. It's also popped up as disclaimers on YouTube as well. Like, I hopped on YouTube the other day and a big thing
YouTube ones were annoying.
Your YouTube's at risk.
Like, you open up YouTube and it was like, I just want to watch a video. And I was like, no. Did you know about the thing? I'm like, yes, YouTube. I've been seeing this notification for the last 2 weeks. I know about this.
And
don't you love it? Adam just wants to watch a video on YouTube. It pops up with did you know that your YouTube's at risk? You're like, yes, I did. I just want to watch this video. The burgers are better at Hungry Jack's. Like, yeah, I know. Can I skip this ad yet? Have you manscaped? I'm like, no, nothing. And it's just like, and this isn't one of those ones I can skip in 5 minutes. I have to watch all 30 seconds of it. God damn it. And then you finally start your 20-minute video that's about some political rant. But right when they're in the middle of a point, they're just like, have you ordered with DoorDash? DoorDash is easy. And you're like,
it does kind of slightly, because Google's main source of revenue is by capitalizing on your attention by putting advertising in front of you. It does mean that they are good at getting their information in front of people, right? A little bit too good, perhaps. Yeah. That's why we're having this conversation. But it does mean that it does kind of take away from their credibility slightly when serious risks to your Google stability, or the way Australians use Google is at risk, is also sandwiched between, like you say, ball trimmer advertisements and the most convenient way to get food to your door at a way that is rapacious and prohibitively expensive to the provider of said food. It doesn't really, it doesn't carry the kind of moral weight that it might otherwise. But
the funny thing is, though, we wouldn't have heard about this had Google not put the notification on their page. And following our conversation last week about the Australian and Sky News and how they're, $40, whatever it was, $1 million in debt, was it, or something like that?
The Australian loses $40 million annually.
So first thing I thought of was, it's obviously just something Murdoch's gone, here you go, Liberal government, slide that through while no one's watching.
Well, I think to a degree. I mean, so what we're talking about is the ACCC has put forward a code of conduct which says, hey, Google and Facebook, you guys have been profiting pretty rapaciously off the news of these journalistic endeavors for many years. And also, you've been quite, between Google and Facebook, almost singularly responsible for the degradation of the media model over the last 2 decades. How about we form a code where all of these news organizations in Australia can collectively bargain with you over how much you pay them for their news, rather than them just taking whatever the fuck you choose to give them or delisting them if they don't like it. And Google said, tyranny! Tyranny!
Market!
Well, they made some pretty, as you said, rapacious claims. Basically that it just meant that, ratings would be artificially inflated to
people, your YouTube's at risk. You're going to get stuff that's not relevant to you. And news organization, the big bad news organizations, which literally make up a percentage point of our bottom line, as Google being a company that is worth $1.2 trillion is complaining about, Channel 9 News, which is worth $2 billion next to it. And so this huge, big business is going to come in and steal your data, and we're going to have to start charging you for Gmail. It's like, bro, let me be the first to say, if you start charging me for Gmail, I will be the first motherfucker on Yahoo Mail. Like, legit, I will be the first bitch on fucking Hotmail. I don't give a single fuck.
Just go from really one conglomerate to the other corporate global software conglomerate.
You really think that, and I know that's an empty threat, by the way, because it's like the money you make off of consumers is well outweighed. The cost of servicing consumers here in Australia is well outweighed by the amount of money that you raise through digital advertising. I don't think it's government tyranny to ask that if you're going to change your algorithm, that you need to give the news networks who primarily survive through your one platform, which is so ubiquitous that it makes everything else impossible, giving them, 28 days advanced warning about these algorithmic changes and passing through a little bit of data about how users that come through this platform interact with their news. Like, that's pretty standard stuff. Like, I love the idea that Google, who's like monitoring your every fucking move with Google Maps and location data and has a file on you bigger than the Stasi, is like, these big businesses are coming in to steal your personal data. It's like, have you met Google? Have you met Google? This is what you do, is you make money off people's personal data for a ridiculous profit every year. Like,
yeah.
And like, I think one of the things that got me, and I've just lost my train of thought. This is what we're talking about, memory retention. I don't have any memory retention anymore, even though I'm reading the article in front of me.
It's all right. You don't have to worry, Adam. Google it.
Google, what was the thought I had 30 seconds ago?
What was my train of thought?
Hey, Google, remind me why you guys are a piece of shit. Okay, Google.
Nah, it's gone. Come back to me.
So there's a few claims in the article, and then this news.com.au article sort of rebuts them one by one. About what was said in the open letter. The problem with the open letter, I think, is it's actually sort of Streisand affected this whole thing. Like, I don't think that...
What's the Streisand effect?
So Barbara Streisand, back in the day, there was a photo of her Malibu house, which was on Google, if I'm not much mistaken, which she wanted taken down. Now, she filed a lawsuit to have that photo taken down, saying, I guess it was an invasion of her privacy. I don't quite recall. And then the lawsuit made international news headlines and blew the whole thing up out of proportion. So I think by them trying to wage this like public information campaign to get the public on their side, they've actually like blown it up and made everyone take a much harder look at it and gone, actually, this is really fucked up, Google.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think I think the thing from Google's, this is probably what I was going to say earlier, the thing from Google's perspective is that there's only one other country I think that they're aware of that has done something similar, which is Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, Google's worldwide, prestige worldwide. If this were to take off and every other country starts going, oh, hang on, it wouldn't just be $2 billion with Channel 9. It would be multiple hundreds of billions of dollars across the world, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to try and, from Google's perspective, stop it at the outset, stop it at its source, and set it, and don't set precedents.
It's the gun rights argument. If we allow them to make... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, to take a quote from A Bug's Life, you go, once one of them stands up, they all stand up.
Yes, indeed.
Weirdly enough, spoken by Kevin Spacey, and boy, did that age well.
Kevin. R.I.P. Or not. And so it's the same argument that the NRA makes, where like, okay, we could allow this like very common sense gun legislation to take place, but then what happens if they want more common sense gun legislation, and then they're going to take your guns away with jackbooted thugs? It's a slippery slope argument, which I don't think it really holds up on the facts. It's
not for the NRA, but I think for this it would.
I see. The thing is like, Google is such a immensely profitable organization that I'm just to say that having to collectively bargain with a few minor news organizations in any one country, when you as a company are still worth $1,200 billion, like any company's news organizations still don't make up a fraction of that price. It's rather than saying like, it's Google, you get what you're given. They actually have to enter a good faith business negotiation like every other business in the world has to do. And if that's no longer profitable for you, then you don't have a business model. Like, it's not good enough to say like, oh, well, you know, they can't afford to do it, so we'll just let them being a completely rapacious, unchecked version of capitalism that ruins democracy and, you know, sucks up people's news for free and gives them nothing for it because they're Google. Like, that's not a good enough justification. You have to, you're a business. You have to operate in the business world like everyone else's. And if you're using people's content, if I use a photo, okay, in a YouTube video, I have to credit the person or I have to pay them royalties. Even with royalty free, there's still restrictions. Like, but apparently Google and YouTube can make billions of dollars a year in Australia alone by you know, serving up other people's content without having to pay, you know, pennies on the dollar for what they raise. Like, that's not a sustainable solution. And yeah, I do think it was something that Murdoch pushed because he's the one that's likely to benefit the most from it. News Corp is worth $9 billion. It's by far the largest organization for journalism in Australia, sadly. They stand to gain the most.
I trust the ACCC. It is an ACCC recommendation. At the moment, the legislation's only draft. I think it's
it's still up for public comment.
Where's it gone? Yeah, you can look at it on News Media
Bargaining Code. Yeah.
So,
or as Google would have you believe, jackbooted thugs coming to kick in your door and steal your Google photos.
Did you want to go through the claims that they were making in their open letter?
So yeah, in this news.com.au article, sometimes good journalism turns up in unexpected places. Quote, claim it will create an uneven playing field when it comes to who makes money on YouTube. And then fact, YouTube is not mentioned at all in the draft law behind the news bargaining code. So, and this is why shortly after Google's open letter, the ACCC came out with another statement saying, hey, that open letter is misinformation. Like, that actively does not constitute, like, I heard the shadow communications minister saying like, oh, it was overly broad and it was a bit generalized. I was like, no, the ACCC has said it is misinformation. They are saying things about how this will affect Google services, which are objectively false.
Well, Google, it may affect Google services, but that's not because they're being forced to do it. Google are making that choice as a conscious decision, if that is the case. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. It's like Google is in control of what they charge or don't charge for their services at all times. Like, just because you have to pay a little bit more for news content doesn't mean that like your whole, you know, apparatus is then forced, oh, you've twisted our arm, we're not making any money, we're going to have to charge you for Gmail. Like, that's horseshit. And they know it's horseshit because they know that people would drop off of their service. They still make a shitload of money. The money that Google makes is primarily through advertising dollars, but it's also through the trafficking of your data. That's how they make money. That's why they give you free Gmail. It's not because they're good guys. It's because there are algorithms that go through the content of your emails and help that to generate, use that information to help generate a profile about you so they can more effectively advertise to you.
That
you are the product.
Your search criteria as well.
The things you search, how long you spend on particular web pages, like the kinds of photos that you upload to Google Photos, the kinds of, you know, the people that are in them or the locations that you're at, like all of this, you are the product by way of feeding this big data machine that then turns around and gives you advertising. So the idea that they're just going to turn around and say, well, no Gmail for you, Australia, like it's complete horseshit, and they know that. They're just using it as a scare tactic to try and...
On your point about YouTube, it, like as you said, YouTube's not specifically mentioned, but I think
YouTube's not mentioned at all.
Why we're getting YouTube, because Google owns YouTube, obviously, that's the link there,
correct.
Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously they know consumers like YouTube. You know, they want their YouTube. They don't want the YouTube to go away. Google has created such a crony capitalistic environment that there are no real competitors to YouTube. You know, I guess there's Vimeo.
Vimeo isn't
okay. I think Vimeo has got like a fraction of a percentage point of the amount of traffic that YouTube does. And this is exactly the problem is these platforms have so much power that they can dictate terms because there is no alternative. What are you going to use, Bing? like a, like, anyway. Quote, YouTube may be obliged to give large news publishers confidential information about our systems that they could use to try and appear higher in rankings on YouTube, disadvantaging all other creators. This would mean you receive fewer views and earn less. Again, YouTube's not mentioned at all, so this seems to be invented wholly out of, whole cloth. What they're alluding to there is like getting some stats on, how much people are interacting with their news stories and, like basic.
I guess the point being is if a news organization is told that they're going to be downgraded, the organization is going to adjust their content to try and get it higher in the rankings.
But that's what everyone's trying to do. Everyone's trying to game the Google algorithm. Like, just because it says you got to give them 28 days warning before you change the algorithm and sort of give them a bit more guidance on how to navigate the algorithm. That doesn't mean they're going to artificially pump the algorithm to get better results. It means that they have some security to act as a journalistic endeavor in the world. You can't just like change an organization's business model with less than 28 days notice, which is what they've been doing up until this point. Google will change the algorithm.
Yeah.
And a bunch of professional news organizations just have to like scurry to catch up. There's no appeals process. There's no, like, you can't just change the terms of every supplier agreement you have everywhere instantaneously all at once and give them no notice. Like that's what they've been doing.
Like they're trying to stop them being able to just go, oh, well, hey, like, I guess like the conspiracy theory idea would be that they're trying to stop Google being like, we don't like that news organization. Let's just change the algorithm so as they don't show up as much.
Well, currently it's completely opaque. You don't know what features into the Google algorithm, and it's been proven in other instances in Spain where a similar law was announced. What they chose to do was basically, because Google is where the vast, 90+% of the internet search traffic comes from, they started to take punitive measures against news organizations where, say, Channel 9 barters a better agreement and charges more for their content. What Google would do in that instance is just deprioritize or delist Channel 9.
Yeah.
So, like, you're not on the internet anymore, in effect, because Google's not fucking showing you shit. Channel 9 ceases to exist to the viewing public because you can't find them on Google. And that's what they've done. They've either, deprioritized those listings or just, like, scrubbed that, organization altogether from the search results.
And to be fair, though, like, I don't necessarily think it would be good either for Google to be like, here's the source code, because then that can be abused and that can be proven with things like Cambridge Analytica and stuff.
Yeah, you don't want black hat actors having access to the to every single part of the algorithm, but having professional news organizations clued in before, a few weeks before changes take place gives a security to the business model that does not currently exist, and seems only fair enough. Like,
what else have they claimed in their open letter to Australians?
The law would force us to give an unfair advantage to one group of businesses, news media businesses, over everyone else who has a website, YouTube channel, or small business. News media businesses alone would be given information that would help them artificially inflate their ranking over everyone else, even when someone else provides a better result. So
is that the concept that, Jim's mowing don't get a notification of the algorithms changing, but Seven West Media does?
Right. Yeah. But the fact is like, to be frank, the journalistic apparatus is a lot more relevant to the functioning of democracy than Jim's mowing is, I would argue. So
yeah, I'd probably argue their YouTube account's more important than Jim's mowing's YouTube account. I mean, Jim's mowing might be producing some quality content.
Who knows?
But like, yeah.
I'm not sure if Jim's mowing does have an account, by the way. I just, threw that name out.
I assume.
We don't have to wonder.
Yes. Thanks to Google. One thing that's like that in that statement, it says like you're giving an unfair advantage to everyone else over everyone else that has a YouTube channel or whatever. But I think that like fundamentally shows how broken Google's understanding of their place in the universe is, because it's like those two things aren't equal. Like ABC News, which is an organization full of hundreds, thousands of credible journalists researching, fact-checking, posting something up on YouTube, is actually not the same thing as some fucking flat earther who did his own research and put a level on a plane and reckons the Earth is flat.
As us? They're not as relevant as us?
I think ABC, like the conversation is more relevant to the discussion than we are. And I don't think that's arguable.
The conversation just being a news media piece.
Correct.
Just as a FYI, Jim's group does indeed have a YouTube page.
How many?
They joined in 2007. They have just shy of 2,000 subscribers.
Jim's mowing OG.
2007, they were right on it. That was when I got on YouTube.
Yeah, that's ages ago. So their most recent video was from a day ago about Jim's pool care. Part 6 of Day on the Road with Nate Seabrook.
God.
Jim,
you go.
I reckon they are OG. They need more subscribers. I reckon everyone should head over to the Jim's group and subscribe.
I'm pretty sure I remember a article not that long ago talking about how the guy who started Jim's Mowing had some very problematic political views, if I recall correctly. So maybe keep that to yourself.
Wait a minute. About a month ago, they had a reveal video for Jim's group Monopoly.
What?
They have their own Monopoly?
Can you imagine going to the Monopoly, the guys who own Monopoly? I'm not sure who.
Listen, Parker Brothers.
Milton Bradley?
I don't know. Being like, listen, we do mowing. Can we make a Monopoly game?
Holy shit. There is a Jim's Monopoly. There's a limited edition run of only 1,500 copies. And so it was only relatively recently.
Only 1,500.
I gotta get a good look at this. Oh my god,
this
website's trash.
I kind of want to buy it.
I don't. How is it? What properties are there? Like, you gotta.
Does that mean like Jim's Mowing, Jim's Pool Services?
I don't know. Like, are you buying Jim's group franchise? All right, throw out the rest of the rundown for the show. We're talking about this now.
I was just going to talk about journalistic integrity in the digital
journalistic
age,
integrity be damned. Jim's Mowing Monopoly.
What the fuck?
Ironically, this is the content that will get us prioritized on YouTube.
Indeed.
But like, just one more quick point on the Jim's group. But like, what was that conversation between Milton Bradley or whatever the organization is and the Jim's group going, we think we'd like to make our own Monopoly game. And then they're like, why?
To be honest, I think the Monopoly people probably just have like hey, do you want your own Monopoly? It's $100. Like, I wonder, could we make our own Monopoly?
We could.
I mean, we could only do a limited run of only 1,500 or so. But...
Can look into it.
Tom, are you eating on the show?
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck, dude?
This is a first. I haven't seen Tom eat on the show.
And hopefully a last. So
Alice was very kind and brought me lunch.
So one of the claims is, quote, "We deeply believe in the importance of news to society. We partner closely with Australian news media businesses. We already pay them millions of dollars and send them billions of free clicks every year. We've offered to pay more to license content." Okay, so say that they've offered to pay more. Clearly, whatever the amount that they've offered was found to be insubstantial enough to warrant getting the ACCC involved. I love that this sort of entitlement that's sort of present in this statement, where it's like, we already pay them millions of dollars to use their content and make lots of money off, and we send them billions of free clicks every year. It's like, no, you don't send people free clicks. You're sending them traffic that is relevant for your users. That is what they're searching for. Like, you're not just like sending clicks to Channel 9 out of the goodness of your heart. You're correctly directing traffic that people are searching for to the correct location.
You are literally doing what your intended purpose is.
But to be clear, just Google makes the money because, like, I'm assuming it's, The Age have a web page and a news article, and they buy Google ads on that web page and news article, right?
Well, there's that, and then there's also those, you know how when you do a Google search, sometimes the first few results have ad next to them.
Yeah.
I presume you can pay for that too, to kind of artificially be at the top of searches of things that are relevant to that link.
And so the concept being is that, I guess, I don't know, how do news media earn money off? Because I would have assumed that it's news media placing ads on their pages, buying ads from Google, to help make. Oh yeah, I'm a little bit confused about the monetary process, I guess.
As to how exactly it works, I'm not sure exactly how this
probably
content,
by design.
I'm not sure exactly how this content is sort of licensed.
How does Google pay news media already? Like, how do they give them money?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is it the other way around?
I don't know if it's Google giving that, like, it'd be giving them money through things like if you have advertisements on the page, as you say, like Google ad links, because that's just really a box of code in like the website coding, and that reads like that's not so much related to the content that's on the web page. That's the content to the user viewing it. So it uses that other database of shit like that we were talking about before. So me being a huge nerd, I'll go on that article. There might be an ad for like The Last of Us 2 or something on it drawn from that. But then someone else hops on there and they're really into cars. There'll be car part ads or what you've recently either Googled or visited. Like, I've been a huge nerd lately for looking at PC parts. So I get PC parts everywhere on all those websites.
Okay.
So, and I'd imagine then that like that business has paid to be ads in those sorts of things. And then if I clicked on any of them, there'd be an agreement with like the page that's willing to host them to get like a share of the revenue.
Remember, there's two sides of the transaction for every advertisement that gets placed or received with Google's machine advertising Google AdWords, Jesus Christ words. There is the person who is paying to get the traffic, and there's the person who obviously receives the traffic. Now, the person who receives traffic can also then have Google ads placed on their site and things like that. So at every point in every transaction, Google is making money no matter what. And I love the idea that they're like, we have too much integrity to alter search results. Like, we couldn't possibly do that. You rely on us to give you accurate information. It's like, mate, pretty sure your business model is altering search results based on who pays you the most. Pretty sure that's the model.
So essentially what happens is, PCparts.com or whatever the website is, they will buy certain amounts of Google ads. Those ads will appear on other areas or other websites which have traffic. And then
I think it's called the Google Ad Network or something like that.
Okay. And then those people will click on it. And then obviously how many clicks happened on that particular article, the user organization will receive some sort of monetary gift, I'm assuming. Or not
so the news organizations are both presumably customers of Google in that they place Google ads, but they're also the recipient of Google ad dollars because they monetize the traffic that comes to their website with the only game in town, which is also Google. And
so they're recommending that they change the former. You just said, well,
basically, like when traffic comes to your site, you guys can collectively bargain rather than just taking whatever the rate Google gives you or go get fucked.
That makes sense. I mean, that makes sense for everyone. Like,
that just seems like business.
No other business gets to go, we're so big, we get to pay you what we like, and if you don't like it, get fucked and you don't get to be on the internet anymore. Like, that's not how business works. So for context, Google collected $4.8 billion in revenue from Australia in 2019, including $4.3 billion in proceeds from digital advertising. During the same period, it made $161 billion globally. They can afford it.
Yeah.
They can afford it, and they still don't have to charge you for Gmail in order to get there. They can still make lots of money.
What about the American shareholders?
Fuck the American shareholders. Fuck them.
I'm sure they're still making a gajillion dollars.
Yeah.
It's probably one of those few things where I actually agree with people like Josh Frydenberg. And
right?
Do you know what I mean? Josh Frydenberg's like, what the fuck?
Broken clocks.
Yeah, even a broken Frydenberg is right twice a day.
Keep going, Josh Frydenberg. Make them pay tax next.
See how they like corporate taxes. It is notable that this inquiry was kickstarted, I believe it was, while Scott Morrison was treasurer under the Turnbull government.
Yep.
So I don't know if necessarily a Morrison government would have initiated this kind of endeavor, but certainly, like, it is interesting that it is LNP policy that this is something that they want to bring into force. And as you said, Adam, I'm sure Murdoch's influence is a substantial part of that. But like, yeah, there are very certain limited times where I think something that serves Murdoch's interests is also in the best interest of the country as a whole. It's important to have a journalistic apparatus that can sustain itself and make money and have quality independent journalism, so you're not just racing to lowest common denominator clickbait bullshit in order to get by. And the fact is advertising revenues have been declining pretty precipitously for the last 20 years, in no small part due to Google and Facebook sucking up all of that money. And there's lots of graphs. I did a video about it where...
Say graph again.
Graphs. Lots of graphs about showing basically the money that's going directly out of newspaper advertising in particular, newspaper, radio, and some television advertising is more or less going directly into the pockets of specifically Google and Facebook. So this is not like some conspiracy theory. I think if you're going to hollow out these organizations and leave us with a world that has much less quality journalism, the least you can do is like pay a fraction of that money back that you've made off the back of hollowing out good independent journalistic organizations.
And hopefully, I mean, because a lot of these media organizations now are conglomerates, right? So the local paper isn't just the local paper anymore. The Mercury in Hobart is owned by the Murdoch empire.
Right,
it means that
because they've been hollowed out.
Yeah, but it also means that the collective bargaining power of the Murdoch empire, what's the one that owns
Fairfax?
What's the one that owns Fairfax?
Fairfax no more.
It's Fairfax
and 9.
Fairfax and Channel 9 now, yeah.
Yeah. I guess that means that those organizations are easier to deal with as large entities rather than Google having to go, fuck, we have to talk to 700 news outlets across the country. That's probably good in some ways and simplicity, making the thing a bit more simple. But as I said before, I think really Google's it's trying to ramp up the scare tactic to just stop a precedent. Happening.
Because they recognize if this happens all over the world,
this happens in the US, like they would lose a fair bit of money, like
substantial money.
It's not going to put them underneath, like it's not going to make the business insolvent or anything.
And yet they'd still be worth $1.2 trillion at the end of the day. So maybe this is just business. Maybe you have to be a business like every other business.
It's like, it'll be interesting to see how they react to it, I guess. Whether it becomes like a Kodak. Kodak was put out of business because people innovated, but they didn't react, I think, is probably the point I'm trying to make. Whether or not Google reacts by trying to dig their heels in, or whether they adapt with it and change, certain things to make the business better.
It's funny because Google specifically was very much predicated on this idea of being like the outsider, the innovative tech company that comes in and like creates disruption and fixes things. And then like as soon as they become the established player in the space, revert to the exact tactics of crony capitalism that they were disrupting against. It's like, oh, now we're the protectorate, like we're the establishment. So, we need to do exactly the same thing, solidify our place, make sure competitors can't come up, penalize them when they do, ruthlessly negotiate in bad faith against anyone who, comes up with a regulatory framework which might get in the way of our profit motive. Like it's exactly the same playbook as fucking Rockefeller in the 20s and 30s. Like it's the exact same shit. It's just internet search volume instead of oil. Like,
is this probably a good point to pivot towards?
Speaking of tech companies, let's pivot.
We spoke about last week about the disinformation campaign. The Murdoch sort of empire is, well, at least a few people on Sky News are at least sort of accelerating, and then in the Australian.
It's structural. I think it's fair to say that in the aggregate, they're definitely, profiting off of misinformation, the Murdoch News Group. I don't think that's controversial to say.
In relation to coronavirus is specifically the thing we're talking about. But the conversation, which, they post some pretty interesting stuff lately, always have, I guess. But there's a story about, and we didn't talk about this last week, did we? The hashtag Dan lied, people died.
Yes. No, we didn't talk about it, but yeah. So we've read the same thing, obviously. Yeah, continue.
Well, we talked about last week how about, so Alan Jones has got 6,700 shares on a video he puts out and just rants about nothing. And in terms of misinformation and how the algorithm can be manipulated, this is probably an example of what Google are trying to make us fearful of. So this is probably
like manipulating of the algorithm is what's happening. It's not as though we live in a situation where there is a perfect algorithm.
No.
And it's like these bad news organizations are trying to take advantage of it. Like, no, you have, a famously, Russian disinformation campaign that was active in fomenting discord during the 2016 presidential election, which was traced back to Russian troll farms. Like, this is not a controversial, a controversial thing. It's the central question about whether our democracy is allowed to function right now, is like, how much power do these algorithms have for how we get our information?
And you could wonder, you could say, that's the US, that was 2016, whatever, that was an isolated incident. But it's not, because it's happened literally this last week.
Yeah.
So at midday on August 12th, 2020, I'm literally reading from the article, there was a hashtag called Dan lied, people died. And it started trending on Twitter. By the evening, it attracted over 10,000 tweets or retweets or tweets using that hashtag, right? But it's like, well, where did that actually come from? How did that start trending? And its origins are very murky, and it looks pretty dodgy, to be honest. Essentially, it comes from a similar hashtag called China lied, people died, which fueled anti-Chinese sentiment and racism.
And coincidentally, there is a Trump lied, people died hashtag, which was trending this week in America as well. So clearly it's made its way into the discourse.
And whether it's, the same group pushing this, or whether it's just people going, that sounds pretty good.
Just becomes a meme. Yeah.
Yeah. It's unclear. But it first appeared on Twitter on, what was it, July 14, in reply to an academic and political commentator, Peter Van Onselen. Pronounced that correctly. And he wrote, the crook establishes a judicial inquiry, so he cannot be questioned by an already toothless media. Absolute transparent corruption of the system. Ideology for you justifies any crime. Dan lied, hashtag Dan lied, people died. Now, this account uses a profile picture of this character called Les Patterson, who is played by Barry Humphries. And he mainly posts on 3 topics: criticism of the Victorian government, anti-China, and his anti-police. He being a question mark, whether it's actually an organisation that's doing this. But if you go back into the history of this organisation or this profile, you go back, it initially was a posting in Arabic, had a profile picture of was tweeting about Egyptian politics, and had a profile picture of some flags. So why the sudden interest in Victorian politics?
State politics. That's an interesting change.
Interesting switch.
Seems like a bit of a pivot. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, act local, think global. But...
that's always been Vladimir Putin's philosophy.
And look, that's
kill dissidents locally, but infect the discourse globally.
Oh, George, can I offer you a cup of tea in this trying time?
Yes, he said to Alexei Navalny, who incidentally was poisoned this week.
Via a cup of tea, allegedly.
That whole situation's fucked, by the way. But just to wrap this up, where this got really interesting was that it started getting retweets, But the conversation, when they went and looked at all the profiles that were retweeting this, they'd been created like this year. They weren't like existing profiles that have been around for a while. They're all brand new profiles, right? And you can't tell necessarily whether or not they are legit or not legit. But the fact that they're all created around the same time and they're all retweeting the same hashtag doesn't feel genuine.
Very suspicious.
No, when I see someone say something really weird and like crazy on Twitter, like having a real go at Dan or something, and I click on their account and it says it was created this month, I'm like,
oh, look, it's a fucking egg. Let's see what the egg's got to say.
Yeah.
It's not unusual. It's something that Twitch, the video game streaming platform, has picked up on as one of the filtering mechanisms that you can enable for your channel, I believe, is to filter out comments from accounts that are less than 2 weeks old. Because statistically, the people that are most likely to be, commenting trash are either people who have, had accounts deleted and then had to recreate them because they were serial offenders, or it is literally a public misinformation campaign where it's bots that are just spamming horseshit. So it's something that other platforms have picked up on and have, instituted some protections to prevent against. But Twitter, it's, a mere, decade plus old. They haven't had time to handle any of these issues. Like, certainly not.
No, they can definitely censor the American president, but they can't pick up when, there's
can't ban the Nazis.
By censor, you mean, put a fact check on his incendiary tweet.
Yeah. But effectively what these fake Twitter accounts did was they boosted it so much that it got into the trending Australian hashtags, and then from there it was all organic. Conservative commentators picked it up, started spreading it, and then it had reached thousands and thousands of people.
All you need is to get in front of one really famous person who retweets your bullshit, and then, as you say, it gets into trending, and then people in the mainstream pick up on it. It is a deliberate strategy to take trash information and make it mainstream. And as you say, as soon as commentators and things like that pick up on it, that's the narrative now. You've actually, with a handful of Twitter accounts tweeting furiously from different locations, spruiking the same hashtag. If you do it
in Bulgaria, just being like, yeah, cool, man, let's do it.
If you do it in an organized enough fashion, you can, because the internet favors incendiary discourse, you can actually shape the narrative with very little effort. In the 60s, you couldn't wage this kind of misinformation campaign. It just wasn't possible. There were 3 news networks, and you know what each of them was going to say before they even said it, because, you had a more homogenized sort of culture in terms of the discourse. Now it's completely fragmented, very much thanks to, players like Google and Facebook and Twitter, and now every opinion's as valid as every other opinion, and there's no sourcing. And so you, with a handful of bots or a handful of people, can now shape the discourse of an entire country with almost no budget and no effort.
And the real question is, who did this? Is it a foreign actor? Is it someone local trying to push, is it does the Murdoch group have bots that they do this for to try and, or is it literally some conservative secret organization trying to, like, who does this? I would suggest it's a foreign actor.
I think it's literally just another example of, and whether it is the Russian state or someone like the Russian state, it is just a further a further link in the chain of sowing discord in Western democratic countries.
Yeah.
There was a great episode of the Joe Rogan podcast where he had Renee DeResta on, who's like a social media researcher, and she basically detailed, took him through specific instances during the 2016 campaign where, Russian foreign actors were setting up grassroots protests for Black Lives Matter on one side of the street, and then Confederate Pride events on the other side of the street, specifically with the intention of fomenting discord and causing violence and sowing disunity in the lead up to a presidential election. Now, is that possibly the case here? I don't see why it wouldn't be. It's a pretty minimal investment in terms of
just get a few bots,
yeah.
few guys. It's probably
not hard.
To set up like a couple of hundred Twitter accounts. If you've got you could probably have a computer do it for you. It'd only take you like a day. Do you know what I mean?
It is a low-cost intervention.
Yeah, and you can use things like Hootsuite and other,
scheduling
software programs to schedule those in and just automate it for you. So it's cheap, it's free, and it just takes the time to, not having that much time to do. Interesting. On a side note, because I know we're all massive nerds, the new Call of Duty trailer dropped because it's been 12 months. We have to have a new Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah.
And it's called Call of Duty Cold War, and their trailer is literally just apparently this, and I haven't verified the information they've put on this trailer, but it is a former Soviet, apparently, defector.
Yeah, that's a real clip they use in that thing. Yeah. I've seen that clip.
And that's literally the stuff that he talks about, is how to overthrow a Western government, basically.
Yeah. How to overthrow a society,
and using these exact tactics.
Yeah.
Which is, and this is doctrine that has been around since the 50s. So anyway,
it's great.
I just think it's important to acknowledge that this is happening, and that Google's, in relation to the Google story, it's not an unfounded fear that people could use algorithms to their advantage, but it's all about balance, right? And making sure that if Google had their hands on the ignition, so no matter what happens, it's really, they could or not provide algorithmic data to organizations at their discretion. So I don't know. It's kind of up to them, really.
It's interesting that we've got a friend of the show, Jack, writing in, which I did not hear, which I did not notice earlier. Apologies, Jack. From what I understand, is that some are afraid that Google will make News Corp or Fairfax articles appear more frequently than other broadcasters. However, I feel that few people get news based on Google's results. Personally, it is really Reddit that informs me. And this is exactly the problem, is that everyone's getting their information from a myriad of different sources. I don't think, personally, I don't think News Corp is the best source for journalism, but as a rule, even if it were the case that major news organizations were getting preferenced, in an age of total misinformation, I think that's unambiguously a good thing, that professional news networks are the ones that get elevated.
I wouldn't be getting verified news stuff from Reddit. You can find stuff.
I think they mean from Reddit, in that someone posts a link to The Age on Reddit, being like, "Whoa, you guys see this?" Bam, that sort of stuff. So getting your links from Reddit rather than using Google. You don't just hop onto Google and go today's news.
But by the same token,
90% of people would use Google though.
No, yeah.
Or Facebook.
By the same token, Reddit is still algorithmized. It's still, there's still an algorithm at play as to what gets served up, what gets boosted. Obviously people's likes and their attention on things, play a factor in that. But
karma points or something.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. But like any service on the internet, there is an algorithm at play. There is an algorithm in what Instagram photos you see versus other photos. I remember it being a little bit better when it was more chronological, stuff just showed up in your timeline in the order that it appeared. But the way these companies make money is by deploying algorithms. So it's completely unsurprising. Everything you see on the internet is to some degree curated for you. There's this great series from the New York Times podcast called Rabbit Hole, where they discuss this in some depth, basically talking about how filter bubbles work, and how the algorithms basically can lead you down a path towards extremism, and do it by degrees. That's because it's leading you to the most incendiary content, and there's always something that's a bit more fringe than you, and then normal people. It details the story of this guy who was sort of alt-right and then came back, and sort of his journey through this. It's really interesting. I'd recommend it. So
interesting that I haven't seen Facebook respond to this, because they would also be affected by this legislation, apparently this code.
Facebook's been a bit more inconspicuous about it. They haven't gone as much on the offensive about it. But I think because Facebook makes money either way.
Maybe they just don't care as much. Like, oh, Australia. Yeah, so, another chapter in the information wars. Meanwhile, as we said, Russian political opponents are getting poisoned with teacups and then denied medical treatment into hospitals in Siberia, but that's fine.
They're in a hospital in Siberia from which they refuse to discharge him because reasons.
It's so dumb. The whole thing is and it's like...
Sounds totally above board.
Is it because he's dead and they can't...
and they don't want people to know?
Like, why would you poison someone and then not have the poison work?
I saw
poison a little bit.
I saw something on Rachel Maddow where they said there were allegations that they were hanging on to him long enough that the poison wouldn't be traceable in his system. So the idea was we hold you for X amount of hours, and then by the time you get to another hospital and they run toxicology tests, whatever we've used to poison you just won't show up. So we've got plausible deniability. But
so the whole thing was fucked, basically. The plan was botched. Somewhat.
Maybe, yeah.
But it seems like the Russians generally want
you
to know if you've been poisoned. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like
using it as a message rather than to actually kill him.
But this is what the Russians...
we could have killed you.
This is what the Russians do. They do things out in the open, but with just enough cover for plausible deniability.
Yeah. There is actually a new show. I think it's on... might be Netflix or Amazon, but it's the Salisbury poisonings or something like that, which is about
England.
Yeah, in England, the Russian, the poisoning of the former Russian,
Russian spy.
I don't know if it was a former, I can't remember.
Government member? Oh, yeah.
Former government member, and about sort of that whole scenario in England, which was huge, at the time, because the fact was they used this nerve agent. They didn't know where it was and, where it had been sort of left around, and people were just walking around and potentially, breathing it in and all this kind of crap. But anyway,
on that note,
things are slightly broken in the news media. But I think one of the problems is we are not an incendiary shit talking news show. I think we'd probably rise to greater prominence if we were.
We used to talk shit back in 10 years ago. Now we just
but
we're too level-headed now.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
I feel like
we did that.
Like, we've got our opinions, but we also we come on, we make sure stuff is accurate to the best of our ability, and we come on and make corrections when we're wrong, and we're pretty open about our bias, about our point of view. Like, I'm unambiguously a lefty. Like, I don't. And I don't make any bones about that. And we're certainly a lot more careful than, as we talked about last week, the Australian who seems totally fine with posting unsourced misinformation on their front page as a scoop. It's if we were
come into effect, they won't be forced to do that because they're not looking for the constant edge. Do you know what I mean?
Sorry, explain.
Well, the concept being is the reason why they did that, obviously, is because they're looking for any edge they can get to get a story out there, because it's so ubiquitously just coronavirus at the moment. Any differentiation or any angle you get on that potentially gives you more exposure, right? So if they are not motivated by, if the revenue stream is a little bit more even and they're not as financially motivated to post incendiary shit, they're not going to be looking for gutter trash journalism as much.
I think that's true. And I think that's one of the reasons why, and not that we should be taken as a credible news source or anything, but it's one of the reasons why I feel comfortable us putting out what we believe, is because there is no profit incentive for us, right? This is a labor of love. We make $0 off this. If anything, it costs us money to do. So, we are free from that kind of financial incentive to go to the lowest common denominator for clickbait, horseshit journalism to get attention.
But that said, follow us on Patreon at... Do we?
We do have a Patreon. I haven't
Oh, we do?
We haven't set it up properly to actually...
I thought we exclusively worked through OnlyFans.
Yeah, I only show pictures of my arsehole for money. I'm, that's an honest way to make a living, Tom. Unlike Patreon.
It is.
It's the oldest way to make a living.
Indeed.
And it's totally fine. Sex work is real work.
Indeed. Thanks for listening, guys. We have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world and stealing your privacy at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok at George Sibos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me on Instagram at AC Doreen.
And make sure you follow us all to hell, because that's where the world is going. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces, and we'll see you next week.
Do you think it's ironic that we just spent the last hour and a bit bagging out the, software platforms that basically we use?
Yes.
Well, not ironic, because we don't have a choice. This is the point. Yeah. Is they own all attention. That's the problem.
Don't worry, George. I own some attention as well.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, boy.